They warned me about him, about Kong Min-jae. A storm wrapped in silence. A heart carved from ice and shadow. They said, no woman survives loving a man like him. But I didn't listen. No, I couldn't. Because the first time Min-jae looked at me, I felt every defense I'd built shatter like glass. The first time he said my name, Rejoice, it sounded like a prayer and a promise, like something sacred being spoken for the very first time. I tried to resist. God knows I tried. But how do you fight against the man who makes your heart race with just a glance? How do you walk away when he holds every broken piece of you, when he's the only one who can make you whole? I was supposed to fear him, but instead I fell for him, completely and hopelessly. And now the world is crumbling, enemies are closing in, and my heart belongs to a man who would burn entire cities just to keep me breathing. So tell me, when love comes wrapped in danger, and your heart beats only for a man the world calls a monster, how do you survive when losing him means losing yourself? Welcome to Afrokorean Stories TV, stay till the end. Things are about to get really interesting. The wedding had been a transaction, nothing more. Rejoice stood in the center of the vast marble foyer, her champagne-colored dress hugging her curves, her rich brown skin glowing under the crystal chandeliers. She'd signed the papers 2 hours ago, her father's debts erased with a single stroke of a pen. Now she was legally bound to a man who ruled Seoul's underworld with ruthless precision and a heart that seemed incapable of warmth. Kong Min-jae. The name alone made powerful men tremble. He stood across the room, speaking in rapid Korean to men in expensive suits. He wore black, tailored perfectly to his tall, lean frame. Sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, an aura of controlled violence that made the air around him feel electric. His presence commanded everything. People moved when he gestured, spoke only when addressed, feared even his shadow. And he'd made it abundantly clear during the brief, cold ceremony, this marriage was punishment, not partnership. Rejoice's hands trembled as she stood alone, surrounded by strangers speaking a language she didn't understand. Her father hadn't even attended. He'd sold her to settle his gambling debts and disappeared, leaving her to face the consequences of his weakness. She blinked back tears, refusing to cry in front of these people, refusing to show how terrified she truly was. Min-jae approached, his eyes scanning over her with clinical detachment, as if assessing property. Your room is on the 3rd floor, East Wing. Stay there unless summoned. Don't wander. Don't ask questions. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. His English was perfect, his tone glacial. I need to know your name, Rejoice said quietly, forcing herself to meet his gaze. His lip curled slightly. You already know it. Kong Min-jae. And your Rejoice Park, the collateral for your father's stupidity. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing there, humiliation burning her cheeks. Later that evening, Rejoice sat alone in her assigned room, a beautiful prison with silk curtains, antique furniture, and a view of Seoul's glittering skyline. The luxury mocked her. She was a bird in a gilded cage, trapped by circumstances beyond her control. She thought about her mother, dead 3 years now, and wondered what she would say. Would she tell her to be strong, to survive, to find a way out? The door opened without warning, without even a knock. Min-jae entered, moving with that predatory grace that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so intimidating. He filled the space with his presence, making the large room feel suddenly small. Comfortable? He asked, his tone mocking as he gestured to the opulent surroundings. Rejoice lifted her chin, refusing to cower. Does it matter? The corner of his mouth twitched, whether in annoyance or amusement, she couldn't tell. No, it doesn't. He circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. His footsteps were silent on the plush carpet, but she felt every movement, hyper-aware of his proximity. Your father stole from me. $4 million to be exact. Money he lost gambling. Money he never intended to repay. He stopped behind her and she felt his breath on her neck. You're the collateral. Don't mistake this arrangement for anything romantic. Rejoice's hands trembled in her lap, but she kept her voice steady. I never asked for this. Neither did I, Min-jae said, moving closer. But here we are, bound by your father's stupidity and my need to send a message. No one steals from the Kong family without consequences. So I'm just a message? Rejoice asked, anger finally breaking through her fear. A warning to others? Min-jae leaned down, bringing his face level with hers. You're whatever I decide you are. Remember that. He left without another word, and she heard the lock click into place from the outside. Rejoice didn't sleep that night. She paced her room, tested the windows, locked and alarmed, and tried to form a plan. But what could she do? She was in a foreign country, didn't speak the language, had no money, no passport, no allies. Min-jae had made sure of that. She was completely at his mercy. The next morning, Rejoice woke to sunlight streaming through gauze curtains and the scent of fresh coffee. A breakfast tray sat on her nightstand, perfectly arranged with fruit, pastries, and eggs Benedict. She stared at it, confused. If he hated her so much, why the luxury? Why the care? She ate slowly, savoring each bite despite herself, then explored her room more thoroughly. Someone had unpacked the small bag she'd brought. Her clothes hung in the massive closet, looking shabby next to space meant for much more. But when she opened the other side of the closet, she gasped. Designer dresses, blouses, skirts, and pants in various styles and colors filled the racks. Shoes lined the bottom, heels, flats, boots, all in her size. Drawers contained lingerie, sleepwear, and accessories. Everything was new, tags still attached, and everything was exactly her style. Bold colors, flattering cuts, pieces that would complement her curves and dark skin. How did he know? Had someone researched her, watched her? The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something else, a strange flutter in her chest, a warmth she didn't want to acknowledge. Rejoice dressed quickly in black jeans and a sapphire blouse that made her skin glow, then ventured downstairs. The mansion was even more impressive in daylight. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, artwork that probably cost more than most houses. Staff moved quietly through the halls, bowing slightly when they saw her, but saying nothing. A housekeeper appeared, middle-aged with kind eyes. She bowed deeply. Good morning, Mrs. Kong. I am Mrs. Choi. The master left early for business. He won't return until tonight. Thank you, Rejoice said softly. Mrs. Choi, is there somewhere I can spend the day? A library, maybe? The woman's face brightened. Of course. This way, please. The library took Rejoice's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with volumes in Korean, English, French, and other languages. A massive window overlooked a private garden, and comfortable leather chairs were arranged near a fireplace. It was perfect, a sanctuary. She lost herself in exploration, running her fingers over spines, pulling out random books. She found a collection of African American literature, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, and wondered again who had curated this collection. Min-jae, or someone who knew she'd eventually be here? Rejoice settled into a chair with Beloved and tried to lose herself in the familiar words, but her mind kept drifting to her captor. His cold beauty, the way he'd looked at her with such controlled contempt. Who was he beneath the violence? What had made him this way? Hours passed. The sun shifted across the floor, and she was so absorbed in her book that she didn't hear footsteps until a voice spoke. You read Morrison? Rejoice jumped, nearly dropping the book. Min-jae stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He'd changed from this morning suit into black jeans and a dark gray sweater that highlighted his lean, muscular build. His hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Yes, she said carefully, marking her page. She's one of my favorites. He studied her with those unreadable dark eyes, and she felt exposed, vulnerable. Interesting. I thought American girls only stared at phones and took selfies. The stereotype stung. I'm not like most girls. The words came out stronger than she intended, with an edge of defiance. His eyebrow raised slightly, and for the first time, she saw genuine interest flicker across his face. I'm beginning to see that. He pushed off from the doorframe, entering the library with that predatory grace. That's my favorite chair you're sitting in, by the way. I don't like people touching my things. Rejoice's heart raced. Was this a test? A warning? She met his gaze steadily. Then I guess you'll have to deal with disappointment. Silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Then unexpectedly, a ghost of a smile crossed his lips, barely there, gone in an instant, but she saw it. Saw something crack in that icy facade. You're not what I expected, Min-jae said, moving to the bookshelves. He pulled a book from the shelf without looking, fingers trailing over the spine in a gesture that seemed unconscious, habitual. What did you expect? Rejoice asked. Someone broken. Someone easy to ignore. He turned, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. But you're not broken, are you? You're angry and scared, but there's steel in you. Fire. That's dangerous. Dangerous to whom? To me, he said quietly, then left, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts and the lingering scent of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. The days became a routine. Min-jae was rarely home during the day. Business, Mrs. Choi said vaguely when Rejoice asked. He ran an empire that extended beyond Seoul, beyond South Korea, into international waters, both legal and illegal. Arms dealing, money laundering, legitimate businesses used as fronts, politicians and judges in his pockets. The Kong family was untouchable. And now she was part of that family, whether she wanted to be or not. Min-jae barely spoke to her during the rare dinners they shared, his responses monosyllabic, his attention seemingly elsewhere. But she felt his eyes on her constantly, watching, evaluating, cataloging her every move. It was unnerving and thrilling in equal measure. Things began appearing in her room with increasing frequency. A cashmere throw in deep burgundy, her favorite color, though she'd never told anyone. Books she'd mentioned wanting to read. A journal with a note in elegant handwriting, for your thoughts, since you seem to have many. MJ. She never saw who left them, but she knew. Min-jae was watching her more closely than she'd realized, learning her preferences, noticing details. The thought should have felt invasive. Instead, it made her feel seen. One evening, Rejoice descended the grand staircase in an emerald dress that hugged every curve. She'd found it in her closet that morning with a simple note, "Wear this tonight. MJ." The dress was stunning, silk that felt like water against her skin, with a neckline that showed just enough cleavage to be elegant rather than provocative, and a slit that reached mid-thigh. She'd paired it with gold jewelry and left her natural curls loose, cascading over her shoulders. Min-jae was waiting in the dining room, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she saw him truly react. His jaw tightened visibly, his hand clenching around his wine glass. His eyes darkened with something that looked like hunger, his gaze traveling from her face to her feet and back up slowly, deliberately. The air between them crackled with tension. "Sit," Min-jae commanded, but his voice was rougher than usual. Rejoice moved to the table, hyper-aware of his eyes tracking her every movement. Min-jae pulled out her chair, the first genuinely courteous gesture he'd made, and his hand brushed her bare shoulder as she sat. The contact sent electricity through her, and from his sharp intake of breath, he felt it too. The meal was silent at first, oppressively so. She could barely taste the expensive food, too focused on the weight of his attention. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. "Why am I here tonight? You usually eat without me." Min-jae set down his fork with precise care. "We have a charity gala tomorrow night. You'll be attending with me." "As what, your prisoner? Your warning to others?" "As my wife," Min-jae said, his tone sharp. "In public, you'll play the role perfectly. Smile, charm, make people believe this is a real marriage. Can you do that, or is it beyond your capabilities?" The insult stung, but she kept her composure. "I can act any role you need. I've been doing it my whole life." Something flickered in Min-jae's eyes. Curiosity, maybe understanding. "What do you mean?" Rejoice hadn't meant to reveal that much, but the words kept coming. "My mother died when I was 16. My father fell apart. Started gambling, started drinking. I had to pretend everything was fine at school, at work, to the bill collectors. I became very good at wearing masks. Silence fell. Min-jae's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I understand masks. Perhaps better than anyone. That night, Rejoice couldn't sleep. She kept replaying dinner, the way he'd looked at her, the way the tension had shifted from hostile to something else entirely, something that felt almost like a connection. She wrapped a silk robe over her nightgown and went to the kitchen for water, padding barefoot through the dark mansion. But when she turned on the kitchen light, she gasped. Min-jae sat at the island, shirtless, drinking whiskey straight from a bottle. His torso was a work of art, lean muscles, defined abs, smooth skin marked by a few scars that spoke of violence survived. He looked up when she entered, and she saw weariness in his eyes, vulnerability he probably didn't mean to show. Sorry, she whispered. I didn't know anyone was here. Don't apologize. His voice was rough, affected by alcohol or emotion, she couldn't tell. You live here too. You have every right to the kitchen at 3 a.m. Rejoice moved to the fridge, hyper-aware of him behind her, of his eyes on her barely covered body. When she turned with her glass of water, he was closer than expected, having moved with that silent grace. The moonlight through the windows cast shadows across his chest and abs, highlighting every ridge and valley. You should go back to bed, he said, but he didn't move, didn't look away. So should you. I can't. His honesty surprised her, the rawness in his voice. Not when you're under the same roof, looking like that, smelling like that. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustrated. You're making this impossible. Rejoice's breath caught. Making what impossible? Hating you. The confession was barely a whisper. His eyes met hers, and she saw everything he'd been hiding, desire, confusion, something that looked like pain. I was supposed to hate you. You were supposed to be easy to ignore, easy to treat as an object. But you're not. Min-jae. You're brilliant, he continued, as if the words had been dammed up too long. You're brave and strong, and you don't back down even when you should. You read Morrison and Angelou. You challenge me. You refuse to be broken. He stepped closer, and she could feel the heat radiating off his bare skin. And you're so goddamn beautiful it physically hurts to be in the same room and not touch you. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Then why don't you? The question hung in the air between them, dangerous and tempting. For a moment she thought he would close the distance, would finally break the tension that had been building for weeks. His hand came up, almost touching her face, trembling slightly. Then he stepped back abruptly, jaw clenched. Because once I start, I won't be able to stop. And you deserve better than this, better than me, better than this life. He left quickly, leaving her alone in the moonlit kitchen, heart racing and body aching with unfulfilled want. The next morning, everything felt different. Rejoice came down to breakfast to find Min-jae already there, and the atmosphere was charged. He wouldn't meet her eyes, but his hands kept clenching and unclenching. About tonight, Min-jae said as she sat. The gala is important. Every major player in Seoul will be there. Politicians, business leaders, rival families. We need to present a united front. I understand, Rejoice said. I won't embarrass you. That's not what I'm worried about. Min-jae said quietly, finally meeting her gaze. I'm worried about how others will look at you, speak to you, how I'll react when they do. The possessiveness in his tone made her skin flush. I can handle myself. I know you can, Min-jae said. That's part of the problem. You're too capable, too confident. Men will notice. They'll want what's mine. I'm not yours, Rejoice said automatically, but the words lacked conviction. Min-jae smiled then, a dangerous, predatory smile that made her stomach flip. Keep telling yourself that. Maybe eventually you'll believe it. That evening, as staff helped her prepare for the gala, Rejoice stared at her reflection in disbelief. The dress Min-jae had chosen was breathtaking, midnight blue silk that seemed to glow against her dark skin, with a sweetheart neckline and a fitted bodice that showcased her curves before flowing into a dramatic skirt. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo with a few curls framing her face. Diamond earrings, real ones, Mrs. Choi assured her, sparkled at her ears. She looked like she belonged in this world of wealth and power. She looked like she belonged to Min-jae. When she descended the stairs, Min-jae was waiting at the bottom, devastating in a black tuxedo. He looked up, and the expression on his face made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. He reached her, offering his hand. "You're stunning," he said simply, voice thick with emotion. "Every man at that gala is going to want you," he added as he led her to the car. "And every single one of them will know you're mine." The ride to the venue was tense. Rejoice sat beside Min-jae in the back of his Bentley, acutely aware of his body next to hers, of his hand resting possessively on her knee. "Are you nervous?" Min-jae asked as they approached the venue. "Terrified," she admitted. His hand tightened on her knee. "Don't be. I'll be with you the entire time. No one will touch you, threaten you, or disrespect you. I promise." The gala was overwhelming. The venue was a five-star hotel ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers and opulence. Hundreds of guests mingled, all dressed in designer clothes, all speaking multiple languages, all radiating wealth and influence. Cameras flashed as Min-jae entered with Rejoice on his arm, and she heard the whispers immediately. "That's the new Mrs. Kong. The American. I heard she's payment for a debt. Beautiful, though. He actually looks happy." Min-jae's hand settled possessively on her lower back, his touch firm and warm through the thin silk. "Stay close," he murmured low enough that only she could hear. "And smile. We have a reputation to maintain." They worked the room together, a unit. Min-jae introduced her to business partners, politicians, and socialites. She smiled, made small talk in English and the few Korean phrases Mrs. Choi had taught her, and watched the dynamics carefully. These people feared Min-jae but craved his approval. Even the most powerful men in the room deferred to him. "Mrs. Kong, you look absolutely radiant," an older woman said in perfect English, her eyes shrewd and calculating. "How are you finding Seoul?" "It's beautiful," Rejoice replied carefully. "Different from home, but beautiful." "And your husband, he's treating you well?" The question felt loaded, dangerous. Before she could answer, Min-jae appeared at her side, his hand sliding around her waist to pull her close. "My wife is very happy, Mrs. Park. Perhaps too happy. She's becoming spoiled with all the attention I give her." His tone was light, teasing, nothing like the cold man she'd first met. The older woman laughed, and the moment passed, but Rejoice felt the message clearly. She belonged to him, and anyone who suggested otherwise would face consequences. The evening progressed smoothly until a man approached, young, handsome, with an easy smile and British accent. "You must be the new Mrs. Kong." "I'm James Park, import-export business." "I don't believe we've met." Rejoice extended her hand politely. "Rejoice Kong. Pleasure to meet you." James held her hand a moment too long, his thumb brushing her knuckles in what could have been an accident but felt deliberate. "The pleasure is entirely mine. You're far more beautiful than the rumors suggested." Before she could respond, Min-jae materialized beside her, his movement so swift and silent she hadn't seen him coming. He pulled her back against his chest, his arms wrapping around her waist in a gesture that was both possessive and protective. "Park," Min-jae said, his voice dropping several degrees. "My wife isn't interested in business talk, or in anything else you might be offering." The temperature in their small circle dropped 10 degrees. James paled, recognizing his mistake. "Of course, my apologies. I meant no disrespect." "Then I suggest you leave before you accidentally give some." Min-jae's tone left no room for argument. James retreated quickly, disappearing into the crowd. Rejoice turned in Min-jae's arms, ready to tell him she could handle herself, but the words died when she saw his expression. His eyes were dark with fury, his jaw clenched so tight she could see muscles jumping. But beneath the anger was something else, fear, possessiveness, raw emotion he wasn't quite hiding. "That was unnecessary," she said quietly. "Was it?" His grip on her waist tightened. "James Park has ties to our rivals." He was gathering information, probing for weaknesses. And he was looking at you like, he stopped, jaw working. Like what? Like he wanted to take you from me. The confession was raw, honest. Like he thought he had a chance. Her breath caught. You're jealous. Damn right I'm jealous. He leaned down, his lips nearly brushing her ear. You're mine, Rejoice. Legally, officially, and in every way that matters. The thought of another man touching you, speaking to you like that, makes me want to commit murder. The intensity in his voice, the barely controlled violence should have frightened her. Instead, it made heat pool low in her belly, made her skin flush with desire she couldn't deny anymore. Min-jae. We should dance, he said abruptly, pulling back. People are watching. He led her to the dance floor, and she was acutely aware of eyes following them, curious, envious, calculating. Min-jae's hand settled on her lower back, the other taking her hand, and they began to move to the classical music playing. He was an excellent dancer, leading her effortlessly, their bodies in perfect sync. You dance well, she murmured. I was trained in everything. Dancing, fighting, languages, business. My father believed in perfection or nothing. His voice was flat, but she heard the pain underneath. He sounds difficult. He was a monster. The admission surprised her. He taught me that power is everything, that weakness is death, that emotions are liabilities. He beat those lessons into me until I believed them. Rejoice looked up at him, seeing past the dangerous facade to the wounded man beneath. I'm sorry. Don't be. He's dead now. I killed him when I was 25, after he tried to. Min-jae stopped, his expression darkening. Tried to what? Sell me out to our rivals. He valued money over his own son. Min-jae's arms tightened around her. I learned early that trust is rare, that people will betray you for the right price. That's why you're so dangerous, Rejoice. You're making me forget those lessons. Her heart ached for him. Not everyone betrays. Maybe not. He looked down at her, and she saw vulnerability in his eyes. But everyone leaves eventually. Better to keep them at a distance than to let them get close enough to hurt you. Is that what you're doing with me? Keeping me at a distance? His laugh was bitter. I'm trying. But you're making it impossible. The song ended, and another began. Min-jae didn't let her go. His hold was different now, gentler but no less possessive, his body moving with hers in perfect rhythm. You handled Park well, he said quietly. You handled him. I barely said anything. Exactly. You didn't engage, didn't encourage. You played the role perfectly. He spun her gracefully. But I saw how he looked at you. Everyone here sees how beautiful you are, how confident. They all want what I have. And what do you have? She challenged. Min-jae's eyes met hers, intense and dark. The most captivating woman in this room. The only woman I can't stop thinking about, no matter how hard I try. His voice dropped to a whisper. The woman who's managed to do what no one else ever has, make me feel something other than rage and emptiness. Her breath caught. Min-jae. I meant what I said last night. You're making this impossible. This was supposed to be simple. Marry you, ignore you, keep you as a beautiful ornament to remind everyone what happens when they cross me. His jaw clenched. But you're not simple. You're brilliant and brave, and you challenge me and make me laugh, and I can't. He stopped, breathing hard. Can't what? Can't imagine this life without you anymore. And that terrifies me. The confession seemed to cost him everything. The song ended and they stopped moving, standing in the middle of the dance floor with the world spinning around them. Rejoice felt like something fundamental had shifted, like they'd crossed an invisible line they could never uncross. Later that night, in the car heading home, the tension was unbearable. Rejoice sat beside Min-jae, his hand resting on her thigh, his thumb drawing absent circles that sent electricity through her. When they arrived home, she escaped to her room quickly, needing space to process everything. She removed her jewelry with shaking hands, unpinned her hair, and tried to calm her racing heart. Min-jae's confession played on a loop in her mind. he wanted her. Despite everything, the hatred, the resentment, the circumstances, he wanted her as desperately as she'd begun to want him. A knock on her door made her jump. "Come in," she called, expecting Mrs. Choi. Min-jae entered, still in his tuxedo but with his tie loosened, top buttons undone. He looked disheveled, beautiful, and dangerous. And the way he looked at her, like she was water and he was dying of thirst, made her knees weak. "We need to talk," he said, his voice rough. Rejoice nodded, sitting on the edge of her bed. He moved closer but didn't sit, standing before her like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. "This arrangement isn't working," Min-jae started, and her heart plummeted. "Not the way I planned, anyway. I can't keep pretending to hate you, can't keep pretending you're just collateral, just punishment. Because you're not." Her hands twisted in her lap. "Then what am I?" He knelt before her, taking one of her hands. "You're the woman I can't stop thinking about. The woman who walks through my house like she owns it, who challenges me, who makes me feel things I swore I'd never feel. You're the woman who makes me want to be better, who makes me remember what it's like to hope, to care about something other than power and revenge." Tears pricked her eyes. "I don't understand. You said I was a punishment." "You are," Min-jae said, a slight smile on his lips. "The sweetest punishment I've ever endured. Because wanting you, needing you, thinking I can't have you, that's torture. But who says you can't have me?" The words escaped before she could stop them, honest and raw. Min-jae froze. Then he stood slowly, pulling her up with him. "Be very careful what you're offering, Rejoice. Because once I have you, I won't let go. I'll be possessive, jealous, probably suffocating. I don't know how to love gently." "Then love me fiercely," she whispered. "Love me the only way you know how. I'm not fragile. I won't break." Something snapped. Min-jae's mouth crashed onto hers, desperate and demanding. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and she melted into him, opening to his invasion, meeting his passion with her own. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "No going back," Min-jae murmured against her temple. "If we do this, you're mine completely. No half measures, no pretending." "I don't want to go back," she said. "I want this. I want you. Even knowing what I am, what I do." "Yes." She met his gaze steadily. "I see who you are beneath the violence and power. I see the wounded boy your father broke, the man you've become despite him. And I want all of it, the darkness and the light." Min-jae cupped her face tenderly, his touch reverent. "Then you're mine. And I'm yours. From this moment, everything changes." What happened next was a blur of sensation and emotion, gentle hands and urgent kisses, whispered promises and desperate confessions. He worshipped her with a tenderness that made her cry, showed her without words how precious she was to him. When they finally came together, it was passionate and overwhelming, a claiming and a surrender all at once. Afterwards, Rejoice lay in his arms, her head on his chest. She'd never felt safer, never felt more wanted, never felt more complete. "Sleep," Min-jae murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I have you. Always." And for the first time since arriving in Seoul, she slept deeply and dreamlessly, protected by a dangerous man who'd finally admitted he was hers as much as she was his. The next morning, Rejoice woke alone. Panic flared immediately. Had it been a mistake? Would he regret everything? She sat up, the sheets pooling around her waist, and noticed a note on the pillow beside her. "Had to handle business. I'll be back by evening. Don't even think about regretting last night. You're mine now. MJ." Despite everything, she smiled. Then she saw a second box on the dresser, wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a delicate platinum necklace with a pendant, an infinity symbol encrusted with diamonds. It was beautiful, meaningful, and clearly expensive. She put it on immediately, the pendant resting just above her heart. A mark of ownership, yes, but also of belonging. She was his, and he was hers. The day passed slowly. She tried to read but couldn't concentrate. She explored the mansion more thoroughly, discovering Min-jae's study filled with books on philosophy and military strategy, and a music room complete with a grand piano and shelves of vinyl records. She was in the music room, running her fingers over the piano keys, when Mrs. Choi appeared. "Mrs. Kong, you have a visitor." Rejoice's stomach dropped. "Who?" "A woman named Sarah Chen. She says she's a friend of your father's." Every instinct screamed danger, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I'll meet her in the sitting room." Sarah Chen was in her 40s, beautiful in a severe way, with calculating eyes. She stood when Rejoice entered, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Rejoice Park. Or should I say Rejoice Kong now? You've certainly moved up in the world." "I don't know you," Rejoice said carefully, remaining standing. "No, but I know you. And more importantly, I knew your father very well." Sarah circled the room slowly. "Did he ever tell you about me? About our business arrangement? My father and I weren't close at the end." "Pity. He was a fool, but an entertaining one." Sarah stopped by the window, looking out at the garden. "I came to warn you, actually. Out of respect for our old friendship." "Warn me about what?" Sarah turned, and her smile was sharp as a knife. "Your husband has enemies. Powerful ones who would love nothing more than to hurt Kong Min-jae. And now you're here, a weakness, a target, a way to make him bleed." Rejoice's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. "Is that a threat? A warning?" "As I said. You seem like a smart girl, smart enough to know you're in over your head." Sarah moved closer. "Min-jae is using you. You know that, right? This marriage is just business, a message to others about what happens when you cross him. He doesn't care about you. He can't care. Men like that don't have hearts." "You don't know him," Rejoice said firmly. "Don't I?" Sarah laughed. "I've known him for years. I've seen him destroy people without a second thought, tear apart families, and lives like it means nothing. Do you really think you're different? That you're special?" "I think you should leave," Rejoice said, walking to the door and opening it. "And I think you should know, my husband might be dangerous, but I'm not defenseless. Come here again, and we'll have a problem." Sarah's eyes flashed with something like respect. "Perhaps you're stronger than I thought. But strength won't save you from what's coming, Rejoice. Remember that." She left, and Rejoice immediately called Min-jae. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" She explained about Sarah, and the silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Min-jae spoke, his voice deadly calm. "Stay in the house. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming home now." 20 minutes later, Min-jae burst through the door, and Rejoice had never been so happy to see anyone in her life. He examined her from head to toe, checking for injuries, his hands gentle but thorough. "Did she touch you?" Min-jae demanded. "No, we just talked. Sarah Chen works for the Choi family. This was a message. They know about you, about us, and they're making their move." "What does that mean?" Rejoice asked, though she feared she already knew. "It means you're in danger," Min-jae said bluntly. "It means we need to move you somewhere safe until I handle this." "No." Rejoice pulled away from him. "I'm not running. I'm not hiding. If I'm in danger, then we face it together." Min-jae's expression was torn. "You don't understand what you're saying. The Choi family doesn't make empty threats. They'll come for you to hurt me. Then teach me to defend myself. Give me a weapon. Teach me to fight. Make me useful instead of a liability." She took his hands. "I'm not the same helpless girl you married. I'm stronger now, and I'm not leaving you." Min-jae cupped her face, his expression torn between admiration and fear. "You're brave. Stupid, but brave." "I'm your wife," she said simply. "In every way that matters now. That means I stand with you, not behind you." "She's right," Min-jae said quietly, more to himself than to her. "I can't protect you if you don't know how to protect yourself. And keeping you in the dark makes you more vulnerable, not less." Over the following weeks, Rejoice's life transformed. Min-jae trained her personally, teaching her basic self-defense, how to shoot, how to recognize danger, how to read situations and people. He introduced her to his inner circle, made it clear she wasn't just a decoration but an essential part of his organization. And slowly, the coldness that had defined their relationship melted away entirely, replaced by something fierce and consuming. Min-jae was attentive, affectionate, protective to the point of obsession. He showered her with gifts, took her to secret places around Seoul, shared parts of himself he'd never shown anyone. She learned his habits, how he liked his coffee, that he couldn't sleep without checking all the locks, that he played piano when he was stressed. She learned that beneath the ruthless exterior was a man who'd survived unimaginable cruelty and somehow found the courage to love despite it. He loved her with an intensity that sometimes overwhelmed her, constantly touching her, watching her, needing to know where she was and that she was safe. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like coming home. One evening, 3 weeks after Sarah's visit, Rejoice sat at dinner with Min-jae, laughing at something he'd said. The atmosphere was light, happy, normal. She'd almost forgotten about the danger lurking in the shadows. Then her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it and went cold. It was a photo of her from that afternoon, taken from across the street while she'd been shopping. The caption read, "Pretty dress. Would be a shame if something happened to the woman wearing it." She showed Min-jae and watched his expression darken into something murderous. He stood so abruptly his chair toppled. "They're escalating," Min-jae said, his voice deadly calm. "This isn't a warning anymore. It's a declaration of war." "Then let's give them a war," Rejoice said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. What followed was a week of tension so thick she could barely breathe. Min-jae increased security, assigned her constant bodyguards, and began moving his pieces into position for some plan he wouldn't fully explain. Rejoice tried to act normal, but fear crept in at night when she woke from nightmares, of men in masks, of being taken, of never seeing Min-jae again. "Come here," Min-jae would murmur when he heard her gasp awake. He'd pull her close, wrap himself around her completely, and hold her until the fear passed. "I won't let anything happen to you. I'd burn this city to the ground first." She believed him. But she also knew that in his world, promises couldn't always be kept. The attack came on a Thursday afternoon. Rejoice was at lunch with Min-jae at a restaurant they frequented, supposedly secure, supposedly safe. She'd just excused herself to the restroom when she heard shouts, gunfire, screams. She ran back toward the dining room, but strong hands grabbed her from behind. She fought, using everything Min-jae had taught her, but there were 3 men, all bigger, all trained. They dragged her through the kitchen, through a service corridor, and threw her into a waiting van. The last thing she saw before the cloth covered her face was Min-jae fighting like a demon, taking down attacker after attacker, screaming her name with raw desperation. Then darkness. Rejoice woke in a cold, damp room that smelled of mildew and fear. Her head throbbed, wrists bound behind her, ankles tied to a chair. She tried to stay calm, to remember her training, but terror clawed at her throat. Where was Min-jae? Was he alive? Had he been hurt trying to save her? The door opened and a man entered, middle-aged, expensive suit, eyes like chips of ice. She recognized him from the photos Min-jae had shown her. Choi Dong-woo, head of the Choi family and Min-jae's most powerful enemy. "Mrs. Kong," he said pleasantly, as if they were meeting at a dinner party. "I apologize for the rough treatment, but you understand. I needed to send a message." "Min-jae will kill you for this," Rejoice said, proud that her voice didn't shake. Choi laughed, circling her chair slowly. "Perhaps. But it will be too late for you by then. You see, your husband has been very problematic lately, stealing my contracts, undermining my authority, making me look weak." He stopped in front of her. "I need to remind him and everyone else what happens when you cross the Choi family. I won't be used to hurt him." "Oh my dear, you already are." He pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. "This went out to everyone in our circle 5 minutes ago." The photo showed her tied to the chair, frightened but defiant. The message below read, "Kong Min-jae's weakness exposed." Power means nothing when love makes you soft. Rejoice's heart sank. This was bigger than her, bigger than revenge. This was about reputation, about showing the entire underworld that even the mighty Kang Min-jae could be hurt. He's coming for you, she said with certainty. And when he does, no amount of money or power will save you. Choi's smile faded. Let him come. I have 50 men surrounding this building, all armed, all loyal. Your husband might be skilled, but he's not immortal. Time passed slowly, minutes or hours, she couldn't tell. Rejoice worked at her bonds, trying to loosen them, trying to stay calm. Min-jae had taught her that panic was the enemy, that clear thinking was survival. Then she heard it. Distant sounds, shouts, gunfire. Her heart leapt. He'd found her. The sounds grew closer, more desperate. The building shook with explosions. Choi's confidence cracked, his men rushing in with reports of breaches, of casualties, of Kang Min-jae cutting through their defenses like they were nothing. Impossible, Choi breathed, his face draining of color. How did he? The door exploded inward, wood and metal flying. Min-jae entered, gun raised, eyes wild and dangerous. He was covered in blood, not his own, moving with lethal grace. He spotted her, and something feral crossed his face, something that promised death and destruction. Let her go, Min-jae said, his voice deadly calm. Right now, and maybe you'll die quickly. Choi, desperate, grabbed Rejoice. She felt cold steel press against her throat, a knife, sharp and unforgiving. One more step and she dies. Min-jae froze, and she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. Real, raw, devastating fear. Don't, Min-jae said, and his voice broke. Please. Kill me instead. Take my territory, my money, everything. Just don't hurt her. Why should I? Choi snarled. She's nothing. Just a debt payment. She's everything, Min-jae said fiercely. She's my wife, my heart, my reason for breathing. She's the only good thing in my life, the only light in my darkness. His gun never wavered. So yes, I'll die for her gladly. But you'll die first. The standoff lasted seconds that felt like years. Then several things happened at once. Rejoice jerked her head back, slamming into Choi's nose. The knife slipped. Min-jae's gun fired. Choi crumpled. Then Min-jae was there, cutting her bonds, checking her frantically for injuries. Are you hurt? He demanded, his hands shaking as they roamed over her. Did he touch you? I'm fine, Rejoice gasped. And then she was crying, clinging to him. I'm fine. You came. Of course I came, Min-jae said roughly, crushing her against his chest. Did you think I wouldn't? Did you think anything could stop me? He kissed her temple, her cheeks, her lips, desperate, relieved kisses. I'll never let you go. Never. You're mine, and I protect what's mine. Around them, the building still echoed with violence. But in that moment, nothing else mattered. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The Choi family fell within days, their empire dismantled, their allies turning on them like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Min-jae showed no mercy, and Rejoice watched him work with awe and fear. This was who he was, powerful, ruthless, unstoppable. But with her, he was different. Gentle, tender, devoted. Back at the mansion, after police statements and diplomatic immunity agreements and countless phone calls, Rejoice stood in the shower, watching pink-tinged water swirl down the drain. She wasn't physically hurt, but the trauma lingered, making her shake. When she emerged, wrapped in one of Min-jae's shirts, he was waiting in their room. We need to talk, Min-jae said, his voice serious. Rejoice's stomach dropped. Was he regretting this? Realizing she was too much trouble? He sat on the bed, and she sat beside him, bracing herself for heartbreak. Instead, Min-jae took her hand gently. This marriage was supposed to be fake. A transaction, a punishment for your father's sins. But it's not. Not anymore. Maybe it never was. What are you saying? She whispered. I'm saying I want this to be real. Completely, officially real. I want you not as collateral, not as obligation, but as my wife, my partner, my equal. His voice was steady, certain. I know it's unconventional. I know society won't understand. But I don't care. I want you, Rejoice. All of you, forever. Tears streamed down her face. I thought you were going to end this. After what happened. After what happened, I realized I can't live without you. When Choi had that knife to your throat, I would have traded every dollar, every asset, every ounce of power for your safety. His voice broke. You're more important than everything else combined. I love you, Min-jae said simply, and the words hit her like a tidal wave. I'm not good at it. I'm possessive and jealous and probably too protective. But I love you completely, desperately, with everything I am. Rejoice sobbed, pulling him close. I love you too. It's insane and unconventional and probably wrong, but I've never been more certain of anything. Then it's settled, Min-jae murmured against her hair. You're mine, officially, legally, spiritually, in every way that matters. And you're mine, she said firmly, pulling back to look at him. No more walls, no more secrets, no more pretending this is anything less than what it is. Deal, Min-jae said, kissing her softly. Forever. What happened next was a reaffirmation, a claiming, a promise made flesh. He loved her tenderly and fiercely, showing her without words how precious she was, how permanent this was. And when they finally slept, tangled together in contentment, she knew she'd found her place in the world. The following weeks transformed from dangerous to domestic. Min-jae cleared his schedule, worked from home, and refused to let her out of his sight for more than a few hours. It should have been suffocating. Instead, it felt like being cherished, protected, adored. He took her on real dates, quiet restaurants, private beaches, helicopter rides over Seoul at sunset. He introduced her to his closest allies, not as a possession but as a partner, making it clear she was integral to his organization. He taught her Korean more seriously, laughing at her pronunciation but praising her progress. And slowly, Rejoice built a life that was hers, not defined by her father's failures or Min-jae's revenge, but by her own choices. She enrolled in online courses, started a charitable foundation for children of gambling addicts, and made friends within his circle. 1 month after the kidnapping, at a private garden ceremony surrounded by only their closest allies, Rejoice stood before her husband. This time, choosing him freely, wholly, without reservation. No masks, no pretense, no lies. They exchanged new vows, these filled with truth and emotion that made everyone watching tear up. I promise to cherish you, Min-jae said, voice thick with feeling. To protect you with my life, my resources, my very soul. To love you more with each passing day in ways I never knew I was capable of. You saved me from myself, Rejoice. And I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. Rejoice smiled through happy tears. I promise to love you fiercely, completely, without reservation. To stand beside you always, in good times and bad, in danger and peace. To challenge you when you need it, support you when you don't, and remind you that beneath the power and violence, you're just a man who deserves to be loved. You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. And I'll protect that with everything I am. They sealed their vows with a kiss that tasted of salt and joy and promise, and the small gathering erupted in applause. The reception was intimate, filled with music and laughter. Rejoice danced with her husband, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. She caught Mrs. Choi dabbing at her eyes, saw hardened criminals smile at the obvious love between them, and felt the warmth of genuine acceptance. Happy? Min-jae whispered during their dance. Beyond words, she replied honestly. I never imagined I could be this happy. Neither did I, Min-jae said. You've given me something I didn't know I needed. Hope, joy, a reason to be more than my father made me. You gave me that too, she said. You gave me purpose, protection, and a love I never dared dream of. 6 months later, Rejoice sat in the bathroom, staring at a pregnancy test with shaking hands. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. When she finally looked, she gasped. Positive. She was pregnant. Fear and joy warred inside her. How would Min-jae react? Would he be happy, terrified? Would this change everything? She went downstairs with the test hidden in her pocket, finding Min-jae in his study, reviewing contracts. He looked up when she entered, and immediately his expression changed. "What's wrong?" he asked, standing. "Nothing's wrong, exactly." She took a deep breath, pulling out the test. "I'm pregnant." Min-jae froze. Completely, utterly froze, like someone had hit pause on reality. Then chaos. His chair clattered backward as he crossed the room in 2 strides. Suddenly he was in front of her, hands reaching, eyes wide with disbelief. He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. "We're having a baby," Rejoice said, tears streaming. Min-jae swept her into his arms, spinning her carefully, his face transformed by pure joy. "A baby. We're having a baby." He pressed kisses all over her face, laughing and crying simultaneously. "The luckiest child in the world. They'll have the best mother, the most protective father, everything they could ever need." "You're happy?" she asked, needing to hear it. "Happy?" Min-jae knelt, pressing his forehead against her still flat stomach. "I'm terrified and thrilled and grateful and overwhelmed. You're giving me a family, Rejoice. A real family, built on love instead of violence." "Our baby," he said, both his hands spreading across her abdomen. "Our miracle." The pregnancy transformed him even more. Min-jae was impossibly attentive, hovering constantly, insisting on doctor's appointments and prenatal vitamins and dietary changes. He baby-proofed the mansion months too early, argued about names, and read parenting books like he was preparing for battle. "You're ridiculous," Rejoice laughed one evening, watching him assemble a crib they'd ordered prematurely. "I'm prepared," Min-jae corrected. "You're overprotective," she teased. "But I love you for it." The months passed in a blur of doctor visits, nursery decoration, and increasing joy. Rejoice's body changed, her belly growing round and beautiful. Min-jae worshipped every change, constantly touching her, talking to the baby, planning their future. When she felt the first kick, she grabbed his hand immediately. "Feel that?" His expression of wonder made her heart overflow. "They're strong," he said, awed. "Just like their mother." As her due date approached, Min-jae became even more protective, barely letting her out of his sight. He'd come so far from the cold, hateful man who'd married her for revenge. Now he was a devoted husband, soon to be a father, a man transformed by love. Labor came suddenly in the middle of the night. Rejoice woke to pain and wetness, gasping. "It's time." Min-jae erupted into controlled chaos, grabbing the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago, calling doctors, supporting her carefully to the car. At the hospital, he never left her side, holding her hand, coaching her breathing, looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him. "You're doing great," Min-jae murmured, wiping sweat from her forehead. "So strong." Hours of labor blurred together, pain and pressure and exhaustion. But finally, the doctor said, "One more push." And then a cry. A beautiful, loud, perfect cry. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, holding up a tiny, perfect baby. Rejoice sobbed with relief and joy as nurses placed her daughter on her chest. She was beautiful, dark hair, perfect features, strong lungs judging by her cries. She looked at Min-jae, who was crying unashamedly, staring at their daughter like she was a miracle. "A daughter," Min-jae whispered, touching the baby's tiny fist reverently. "Our daughter. Thank you for her. For everything. For saving me." "We saved each other," Rejoice said softly, the words familiar now, a truth they'd learned together. As nurses took the baby for routine checks, Min-jae sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand. He looked exhausted and elated, transformed by the enormity of what had just happened. "I'm a father," Min-jae said, as if testing the words. "A good father," she assured him. "The best father, because you know what not to do, what not to be." "I'll protect her," Min-jae vowed. "From everything. The world, our enemies, even myself if I have to. I'll love her," he added, "the way I love you. Completely, fiercely, without reservation." When the nurses brought the baby back, cleaned and swaddled, Min-jae stood to receive her. He cradled their daughter carefully, and Rejoice watched her family with overwhelming love. The dangerous mafia boss who'd once vowed to ruin her now looked at her and their daughter with such devotion it made her cry. "What should we name her?" Rejoice asked. Min-jae looked at their perfect daughter for a long moment. "Jisoo. It means wisdom and beautiful." "Perfect," Rejoice agreed. Jisoo Kong. Their daughter became the center of their world. Min-jae was a devoted father, taking turns with nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, singing lullabies in Korean that made Rejoice cry. He'd gone from cold and brutal to tender and loving, transformed by the two people he'd allowed into his guarded heart. 6 weeks after Jisoo's birth, Rejoice stood on their bedroom balcony, watching the sun set over Seoul. Behind her, she heard Min-jae singing softly to their daughter. She thought about her journey, from her father's betrayal to forced marriage to genuine love to motherhood. "What are you thinking about?" Min-jae asked, appearing beside her with Jisoo in his arms. Rejoice leaned into him, touching Jisoo's soft cheek. "I was thinking about that first night when you told me I was just collateral. That this was punishment. I was such a fool," Min-jae said quietly. "You were right, though," she said, smiling. "You did ruin me. But not the way you intended. You ruined me for any life that doesn't have you in it. For any love that isn't this consuming. For any family that isn't ours. You ruined me too," Min-jae said, kissing their daughter's forehead. "Ruined me for the man I used to be. For the empty life I lived before you. You made me better, made me whole. You gave me everything." Rejoice turned in his embrace, looking at him, her husband, her partner, her love. "We healed each other. That's what love does. It transforms darkness into light, pain into strength, revenge into redemption." As the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the three of them stood together. A family built from impossible circumstances, from hate transformed into love, from darkness that found its light. Min-jae had gotten his revenge on the father who wronged him. But in the process, he'd found something infinitely more valuable, a woman who saw past his violence, who challenged his cruelty, who loved him despite and because of everything he was. And Rejoice, who'd walked into a nightmare expecting only pain, had discovered that sometimes the most dangerous men held the most capacity for love. Because beneath the power and violence, he was just a soul searching for the same thing she was: home, family, belonging. And now they had it all. Jisoo gurgled happily in Min-jae's arms, and they both laughed, the sound bright and free and filled with promise. This was their life now, complicated, unconventional, and absolutely perfect. Two hearts that had learned to beat as one, now expanded to include a third, creating a symphony of love that nothing, not danger, not society, not the world itself, could ever silence. The dangerous mafia boss who once vowed to ruin her had instead been beautifully, irrevocably ruined by her. And that, they both agreed as stars emerged over Seoul, was the best kind of ruin there was. The kind that breaks you open and fills you with light. That destroys who you were and creates who you were always meant to be. Together, forever, complete. If you've made it this far, besties, thank you for watching. This story of Rejoice and Min-jae shows that love can transform even the darkest hearts. Sometimes the most dangerous love is the one that saves you. Don't forget to subscribe to Afro-Korean Story for more captivating romance stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Hit that like button if you enjoyed their journey from enemies to soulmates, and drop a comment below telling me what you thought about their story. Would you take a chance on love like Rejoice did? Let me know. And remember, love always finds a way, even in the most impossible circumstances. See you in the next story.